call the meeting to order and we'll do our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
I
allegiance
pledge
to the
allegiance
flag
to the flag
of the
of
United
the
States,
United States of America,
for which it stands, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Almost as bad as last night's.
Oh, last night was bad,
Yes, it was.
very bad.
Okay, we do have a quorum of the board here. Lisa and Duncan are remote, and Nancy and I, as you can see, are in person. I guess I'm told what Craig will not be here. Craig is absent with notice, and Mark is absent with notice, and Charlie may still show up either remote or in person. Okay, it's so empty. First, before I say anything, we wanted to make sure that decisions we make regarding the status, whether we're full in person, remote, partial remote, we wanted to make sure that these decisions, other than emergency decisions, are made in a very public fashion and are made by the board. We endured some criticism in the past because people thought it was a subcommittee that made it, but it wasn't, and there was a lot of controversy. So that's why we made the decision to allow whatever we decide this evening, at least to be publicly aired and to provide opportunity for public input. And a lot of, at least, oh, guess what? We just gained Raven. Hi, Raven. And part of the reason that brought us to a decision, which Mary's going to discuss, basically, we're going to be discussing a proposal that from December 23rd through January 8th, that we would be remote. And which was something we had talked about a little bit in the past. We ended up talking about doing it at Thanksgiving. At first, we weren't going to, and then we decided that we did. Most people were quite satisfied with it. But Mark and I and Mary met with union leadership, 2 days ago? And one thing that was communicated to us was the amount of stress that was felt by the faculty, not just professional staff, but by all staff. And we know these are really pressured times, and I know sometimes I'm too focused on keeping kids in school and thinking about kids. But we don't have any school without our faculty. And to the extent that there is an ever-increasing degree of stress and fear, despite the fact that we're doing everything we can, but our numbers are tremendously increasing, and that stress and fear was well communicated to Mary and I and Mark, which kind of had the three of us thinking that one of the ways to reduce that might be to have an extended period of remote learning following the Christmas recess, giving people time to hopefully catch their breath, and also giving time to be able to identify whether there's a flood of new cases coming at us. So anyway, so what we're going to do tonight is, right now, we're going to start with a public input. And after the public input, we'll go to a board discussion, and we'll end the evening with a public input, as we always do. So For those who might have public input, if you could come forward.
Hello, good evening. First and foremost, I want to thank you all for the countless hours.
If you could
Oh, sorry.
identify yourself.
Yep, Sarah Thompson.
Thank you.
Good evening. First and foremost, I want to thank you all for the countless hours, days, and nights you have sacrificed, especially this year, to ensure education continues during the pandemic. My husband and I are proud to live here and be a part of the Laker community. In addition, I want to take a moment to commend the teachers and custodial staff. They have gone above and beyond and have done a wonderful job being transparent and communicative throughout the whole process this fall. This is no small feat, and they've all done this while keeping children safe and nurturing them while also educating them. That is beyond commendable. So thank you to all of them and you. But I, in my good conscience, must speak tonight. As a parent of a kindergartner, member of the Meredith community, and teacher in another school district, children need to be in school. The utmost priority of this district needs to be quality in-person education. I can speak firsthand in my role as a reading specialist to say that there are so many children who are so academically behind right now due to the effects of the spring. In my role, I've seen the detriments of it and can attest that the fallout is something that will take so much time to address and remediate. We won't know for years or months to come. But I ask of you as a decision-making team to reconsider your plan to close in-person learning, especially given the lack of statistical evidentiary necessity for after the break. I am also saddened at the lack of transparency and community input in the decision-making that has been occurring. For a while now, the SAU has been pushing remote learning for the holiday season. There was an emergency meeting before Thanksgiving, which resulted in the schools closing the following week. Students were home for 12 days. After that, there was no data released explaining how the closure helped to lessen the spread. We were told that it was made out of an abundance of caution, but what data supports that it was the right decision and it is the best decision to make now? Furthermore, it was disappointing that there was no survey released or questionnaire sent to find out how remote learning went for families and learners. That should be a top priority while students are in remote learning and making any important decision. We kept getting blanket statements that we are being prudent and doing things out of an abundance of caution, but what is wanted as parents, community members, and taxpayers is more specific information that goes into the decision made. Furthermore, I must add that it is currently part of the COVID plan that children wear masks all day while on school transportation in the building. As a parent, I can assure you that I am thankful for that, and I'm proud of the fact that you are putting the children's safety as a priority. It has also been stated, though, that there is no community transmission within the school. I can imagine how tiring it must be to do contact tracing, but unfortunately, that is the job we are in at this time. There is nothing any of us can do to change that. But closing schools down and going remote the first week of January is an idea being made without thinking of all the well-being of all of the learners in the district. We are making a decision on something without knowing the actual data and case statistics 2 whole weeks from now. If that is the route this team decides to go, especially with schools not being in session next week in person, students will not be in person for 24 whole days. While that does include vacation days, that does not take into account the days that they are remote. In education, we talk about the summer regression that students make. 24 days is an awfully long time when you think about it. Why can't the decision to go remote be made 2 weeks from now in the beginning of January? At that point, the data can be looked at and a thoughtful decision can be made at that time. I also think it would be wise for you to look at the data, which I'm sure you're already doing, and making a decision specific to each school rather than for all of the schools. We know that children, especially young children in the primary grades, should be in school in person. Making a broad decision for all 3 schools just does not seem fair. Have you seen a primary student doing remote learning? You cannot attest to the fact that it is a robust, engaging learning experience. Have you seen a child hide under a table because he felt overwhelmed by being on the computer? Have you checked in to see how that learning compares to in-person learning? And it's very unfortunate that parents were never asked to share their feedback of how it went. It would also be foolish to think that adding a week of remote will keep people home. If anything, it seems like it would incentivize the opposite. The safest place for children are at school in their same cohorts with their same classmates and teachers. By not having them in school, children will go to a public space. They might go to a restaurant, they might go skiing, they might go to Fun Spot or other areas, and they also will be exposed to more people. Parents have to work, and as such, they may have their children go to an aunt's house, a grandparent's house, a neighbor's house, a daycare center. All of that will expose them to that many more people. Lastly, I must say that to close school next week feels disheartening as an educator and a parent. There was no rationale given on the statistics or no specific information given on the statistics or data present to suggest that a closure is necessary. All we were told is that we are in an active time in the virus and many are concerned about the upcoming break in their families. Therefore, it makes sense to maintain this physical separation at this time. The vagueness in that statement suggests that the priority does not seem to be with the education of the students, which is what the number one reason why we all are here for. Furthermore, to close school on December 23rd seems frustrating. And to give teachers a planning day on January 4th, when in fact we delayed the start of the school year for this very reason, seems confusing. What information is being used to make these decisions? Many of us would like to know and would like more community input in this decision process. Overall, the lack of communication and transparency just feels really disheartening. You should do better. You must do better. Quality in-person education should be the topmost concern of this board and team. At this point, including the closure of in-person learning next week, the elementary school will have been remote or closed for more than 10 school days. You want to add another 6 onto that. What a contradictory message to the school district's mission. I implore you to reconsider your decision to close in-person school and to please wait to make that decision at the necessary time, which would be 2 weeks from now, not tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay, there are 3 messages in the queue right now. The first one is from Sherry McMillan, ILES art teacher. Dear Mrs. Moriarty and school board members, as an ILSD teacher, I would like to personally thank you for hearing our concerns. As you have been made aware, worry and anxiety among staff has been at an all-time high. Knowing that you are taking steps to help alleviate some of the stress we are feeling demonstrates that you genuinely care about us. On behalf of our staff, thank you for your continued concern and support for our well-being during this pandemic. The second message is from Brittany Waldrop. ILSD continues to make decisions that are compromising children's education. Making today a full snow day was overdramatic, just as switching the Sandwich Central School to remote learning for next Monday and Tuesday, when these positive cases are not at this school. Remote learning is a far cry from in-person education, and to think that these children are receiving inadequate education is a farce. Do better. And the last message in the queue is from Lindsay Weiner. I would like to thank Superintendent Moriarty for giving us snow days yesterday and today instead of moving us into remote learning. My kids are enrolled in the virtual pathway, and for the first time since March, my family was able to feel normal again, which was so great for our kids. Seeing all of the pictures and happy posts on social media from other Interlakes families was the icing on the cake. Thank you so much. I would also like to thank our educators, support staff, and administration for all you have accomplished over the past year. So much has been asked of you, and I want you to know that you are truly appreciated. I hope you were able to enjoy your snow days and that you enjoy a very relaxing holiday recess. Of course, I'd like to give a special shout out to my kids' teachers, Mrs. Bannon and Mrs. Detola, who have amazed me by how they have been able to engage K2 learners over a computer screen in a way that has fostered real growth. My family is beyond grateful for how our teachers, paraeducators, support staff, custodians, and administrators have gone above and beyond to continue educating and taking care of our young people through a global pandemic. We love you so much. Finally, although my family is remote, I would like the board to know that I fully support the proposal that has been put forth for tonight's consideration, as I feel it will be safest for our community. Case numbers, death tolls, and positivity rates are the highest they've ever been, and it only makes sense to be proactive at this point for the good of all of our neighbors. Thank you for your time. And I'm just checking, and there are no additional messages at this time.
Thank you, John. We'll take a little more time for public input. John, are you getting any new messages in?
No, but just as a, not necessarily a point of order, but somebody from designated as Moulton Farm was attempting to get into the Google Meet, but because I did not have a record of who that was, I denied them.
It's Charlie.
Oh, sorry, Charlie.
That was me, John. I'm sorry. Charlie Hanson.
Welcome,
Can I try to
Charlie.
get in again?
I take it back. I do have one last one, Mr. Hanson, if it's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Snuck in under the wire. This is Ashley Bullard from North Sandwich. Thank you for inviting the public to express their opinions and for continuing to balance the burden of keeping our community safe and the need to educate our children in the most challenging of circumstances. Our family is in support of prolonging remote learning period for an extended period of time. We know firsthand of the emotional toll this puts on the entire family, not just the students. Despite this toll, we feel that it is time to consider the whole community rather than one individual group, trusting that the school will continue to reach out and support students and parents as their emotional and mental health are challenged. A decision to move to a prolonged remote learning experience in this time of skyrocketing COVID cases is a better decision than our current wait-and-see approach, which causes a constant state of worry and anxiety whenever the ILO phone calls or emails pop up. Thank you, Ashley Bullard.
Okay. Any more? public-
Richard,
Yes.
this is Charlie Hanson. How are you?
Hi, Charlie. We're in public input right now.
I know I'm just going to ask, can you please ask Mr. Martin to let me in? I am the Molten Farm person.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
He is working on that,
He is
Mr.
working
Hanson.
on that.
Thank you.
He thought it was a foreign intruder.
Charlie, try it again. I don't have anything in here to admit you, so you're gonna have to like back out of it and try it again with that account.
Did you hear that, Charlie?
I did, and it doesn't seem to be working. So I don't want to disrupt this meeting anymore. I'll just stay on the phone. Thank you.
Okay, Charlie. Okay. Guess we'll close the public input. And now I'll turn it over to Mary, but before that, I'll actually seek a motion in reference to the proposed school schedule. Okay, Nancy?
May I add one little adjustment?
Yes.
To include that allow continuation for the athletic practices and UIT attendance with transportation.
Okay. And do we have a second?
I will.
Seconded.
Okay, Lisa seconded. Okay, we're open for discussion.
I would like to say something.
Go ahead.
So I would just like to thank all of the staff at our Interlakes, the teachers, the paras, the facilities, folks, all the staff, because I think it is a highly anxious time. I think we all feel the anxiety here, and it's hard even for us on the school board because we just want to make sure everybody in our family is safe. So when you talk about being responsible for people age 3 to 70 within our school, that's a big responsibility. And I think that we've been more than, in my opinion, we've been really open and honest with everybody. We've been inclusive with our school board. We have done live streaming. I myself, I have an underlying condition. So with the COVID numbers being high, I didn't feel comfortable going to the auditorium tonight because I just didn't know how many people would be attending. And I was nervous to go there. So I will be honest, for me, it wasn't an option. So I thank the other school board members and the superintendent for, being there in person. But I think that we need to realize that it's a very difficult time right now. It's a pandemic. And I would speak to having, the person that spoke that's there. I just want you to know that in Molten Borough and Laconia, after Thanksgiving, both those schools shut down because they did have an outbreak of COVID cases. So I think it was a good decision that we closed our doors for the 5 days, and I would be in favor of closing them again after the Christmas break, just for a few days, to make sure that we can grasp whoever might have been exposed to COVID and to protect our staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Nancy?
Yes, I want to say that, I live in a neighborhood full of teachers, but I also have been a teacher and an administrator for a long time till I retired. And I think that the stress that the faculty and staff are feeling right now, I heard it in your response too when you were talking about the kids who hide under their desks. One of the things I learned over time is that when the teachers get stressed, that stress gets relayed to the kids. And I've also learned, I believe that when teachers get stressed, it's because they're worried about their students. There are certainly faculty and staff members who are older or have pre-existing conditions and are worried about COVID, but you've been really helpful and responsive when there are people who've said, I really can't do this, and found opportunities for them to teach remotely. But a lot of the stress comes from what they see happening with kids. And one of the things that I've heard from teachers in Sandwich, who teach both in Sandwich and in Moultonborough Academy and other places, is that the constant back and forth is really hard on the kids. And some of these teachers are spending a lot of time, just trying to support kids who are feeling overwhelmed, anxious. I've been worried about the unpredictability factor. I've spoken about it before, but I do think that's a real stressor. And, as much as I believe that kids should be in person and they're getting a better education that way, knowing in advance, families having the ability to say, here's the plan, here's the structure that's coming, here's what we're going to be doing for a week, here's when you'll be back in school, it can be much better than saying we're going back and then saying, nope, we can't go back. This is happening. It heightens the anxiety for everybody. I really am in support of our not going back until the 8th or whatever the date is that you've put on here, Mary. I made the motion myself. I should know, yes. After the 8th. So it does make sense to me to make this decision now, because I think, the COVID health issues are one thing. The mental health issues and the strain and stress that this is putting, not just on faculty and staff, but on kids, is another. So I would vote for it for those reasons.
Thank you, Nancy. Duncan?
I too support this motion. I think it's prudent given the spectacular change in the numbers across our state and in our community, and that this seems like a reasonable and prudent response to real numbers that have changed. And whether they're new daily cases, whether they're hospitalizations, there are a variety of measurements of where this disease is in our area, and every one of them is worse now than it was a month ago. And it's worse now than it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago. So I think getting a little bit ahead of this makes a lot of sense. And I also completely agree with the point that Nancy just made, that to be able to plan a little bit ahead as opposed to deferring the decision and hoping to get more information. The information is predictable and predicted to further, the cases will get worse. And I think we can see that far in the future pretty reliably, and this makes sense. So I too support this.
Richard?
Yes. Go ahead, Charlie.
I'm sorry, I can't see anybody's hands. I don't mean to be rude.
No, I sat like you did last night, so. Go ahead, Charlie.
I just wanted to say that I think my fellow members articulated all points I agree with. With the situation, this is a difficult situation for our community at large, but it unfortunately is not just about the kids. It is about our community, and to try to keep it as safe. And I say this, I have a dear friend who's 77 years old sitting in the hospital in Wolfboro right now who got COVID from a younger person, more than likely, who knows for sure. But this is real. It's in our backyard now. And I think it's an extremely prudent step to take. So I totally support this proposal so far.
Any other comments from the board? Our student representative?
Yeah, can you hear me okay? I put on
Yes.
headphones. Okay. I am in support of the decision just to have the time to prepare, but I also do to hear that it's a lot more difficult for young learners, and I just wonder what we can do as a community to support people with young kids, because like for me, I can direct my own learning and it's all up to me when I do it, but it falls onto families when kids need help with computers and etc. And it kind of breaks my heart to think about like the kindergartners that aren't going to get their school year. And I don't know. I think that it is prudent though to make this decision now because it is a pandemic. It's not normal times. Things are these are unprecedented. We've never had to deal with something like this, and it makes sense to be as cautionary as possible as we see what could possibly happen. So I support the plan.
Thank you, Raven. Duncan?
Richard, could I make a quick point?
Sure.
I appreciate that every family has challenges and strengths and that there are different capacities to respond to remote learning. But I would like to share, as Lindsay has in several meetings, my family is doing the virtual pathway and I have a kindergartner and a second grader, and they're succeeding well. And it is in large part because of the two teachers in that program. And I have greater confidence than I think others do that the teachers that we have will be able to respond to remote learning, because I've seen two teachers respond to remote learning with incredible care, attention, sophistication, and skill. And I appreciate that everybody has challenges and that remote learning is not ideal, but it is not the black hole that some in our community are painting it as. And I can specifically speak to my family's dealing with it, and that they've done it with, it's been a great success for us. And again, as Lindsay has previously, I will echo those comments specifically to Mrs. Bannon and Mrs. Detola. They have my eternal gratitude and thanks.
Thank you, Duncan. I guess I'll make a few comments. I've been, as Mary knows, tremendously tormented by this because I've been so hung up on face-to-face. And regardless of the successes that may take place in remote, I do think our kids lose out. I was particularly moved by our speaker this evening. She spoke passionately, and she really clearly articulated the other side of this complicated problem. I don't think there is a clear right or wrong. I think there's a balance, and that balance is what the school board, and I know Mary, we're struggling with that balance. I have this fear that we'll end up remote for the remainder of the year, but I don't know. I just fear the future. I don't see things necessarily getting better. But I was very moved by, I don't remember your name, but your comments were well articulated. They were passionate and they were persuasive. But I think I was also quite moved by our meeting with the leadership of the teachers and that the stresses that they are under. So I am more moved towards doing this, not so much because of the science of it, because I think we're dealing pretty good with the science. We don't have clusters. And I think we've got built-in systems. But I'm moved by the stresses that our faculty are feeling, and I'm moved by the lack of faculty that we have sometimes. Staffing is a problem, and it's a problem that's going to get worse. So, given the passion I heard this evening, and also the passion I heard from the teachers, you know, we try to balance it. And that's what we try to do as a board. And maybe we can do a better job in communicating. And I know Mary heard the comments that were made, and if there's any way we can get more input from the public, I think we'll try to do that. But I think in the balance, I'm going to support the plan, although it's very tortured for me to do that. But I think I'm going to support Mary's request. And any more comments? Okay, are we ready to take a vote?
Yes.
Oh, wait a minute, we have another comment. That's okay.
I want to add just one more thing. I mean, I'm hearing what everyone is saying. I'm also a teacher in another school. It is stressful. We chose this profession. There are a lot of people, if you are working in a hospital, you can't just work remotely. You have to work and you have to be there for the students. It is hard. To say it's hard is really putting it mildly, quite frankly, and I think we all know that. But I just would wonder what parents already have to be flexible in terms of knowing that their children might be remote. And like I had said previously, I really just wonder why we can't wait a couple more weeks. I know we've spoken that the data will rise, but do we know that? Most of us are staying home with our families because we were advised to do so. How can we necessarily say that the cases will be on the rise? I don't see the benefit of making the decision now versus waiting 2 weeks. And that's all I want to end with. I just really beg you, could we just maybe wait and just see? Miracles do happen. It could happen that in a couple weeks' time, there might be a like a downslide, or I don't know, whatever word you want to put there, and that may happen. I just beg you, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary, do you want to respond to that?
What I will say is that I think one of the concerns the staff is experiencing is that many families are making very good choices in terms of limiting their vectors, but then there are also families making other choices and the challenges that comes into the classroom. And they are very heightened and worried that the holiday season that is upon us, we will be in a similar situation where people will make different choices. And that's not to pass judgment, but it does expose them and their families to those choices as a vector when they come into school. And so that is, one of the reasons trying to give a bit of a breather and a break or buffer between the holiday and the return to being physically in person. In addition, by doing this earlier, we are able to give parents ample time to make plans. I know the pivots are very hard, and having some time for people to plan seems to make sense. And Monday and Tuesday, we did have 2 additional cases. One has been in quarantine, so it was not as significant of an impact. But the case at ILES, there are, certainly other, the web and the interactions starts to grow sometimes with certain cases, and it seems to make sense where people have had a bit of, again, physical distance, rather than breaking that bubble that we just gained by the 2 snow days and a weekend before the holidays for staff and for families to sustain that distance. And this is difficult. It is incredibly challenging to try to balance needs from 3-year-olds to 70-year-olds. And it's, the choices are hard, and our hope is that we can continue to improve with our remote learning. We've been investing time and energy with professional learning. I certainly will have Mr. Bryant connect and see if there's things we can do better to make the experience more positive for your family and for other families.
Thank you, Mary. Okay. Seeing no other comments from the board, going to ask all those in favor of,
Aye.
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 okay. It's unanimous for those that are here. Okay, that was basically our single item. It's, Mary and I talked quite a bit about this, and we keep on saying it's complicated. I wish there was clear paths, but there isn't. And who knows what the future may hold. But as it is now, school will be on remote from, if I'm reading this right, Mary, December 23rd through January 8th. Is that correct?
So the 23rd through January 4th will be school
vacation.
vacation.
Yes.
We are remote December 21st and 22nd, and then students will be remote the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th of January.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other business?
We do have
Um,
public input. Did you?
What's that?
We do have public input. Did you?
Okay, yeah. No, kind of.
I don't
We do
know.
have a final public input, whether John has anything or you would like to make any final comments. Okay, we have no further public input. I would then entertain a motion, I can see Lisa getting ready, to adjourn. Moved by Lisa. Seconded by Nancy. All those in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Aye.
I also would like to say to everybody, happy holidays, and hopefully in this chaotic time, people can find some moments to de-stress and to relax and maybe to be thankful for what we do have. We live in a wonderful community where compared to so much of the country, we're really pretty safe here, and we should appreciate that. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Happy holiday.